My last video about Claude watermarking has gone slightly mad, so we are back for round 2. The video's got 28,000 views, still climbing, and 650 comments when I pulled this together. 659, we are still going. Apparently, Anthropic can now claim ownership of your code. The EU controls America with their death cult. You can beat the whole system with Notepad, or you can give it to a Chinese model to magically disappear the watermark, or simply print out the text, scan it back in, and the watermark will magically disappear. Nonsense, like a lot of nonsense. So some of you are flat wrong, some are half right, and a few comments have actually found real problems that I want to discuss, really interesting things about the Claude watermark. And because Anthropic still hasn't released the detector or the technical documentation, there are things nobody outside, including myself, can answer yet. Only the people in Anthropic know these answers until they release the detector and the technical specifications. So with that in mind, I want to clear up some of the comments, look at what we do know, look at what we don't know, which is quite a lot, and the comments that found real weaknesses inside of the plan. So to the task, let's hop in. First up, this is a big one, and there were many comments about this and they were highly liked, and I get it, it's an emotive issue. Lots of people are saying that by adding a watermark to your outputs from artificial intelligence, Anthropic, Claude, are now claiming ownership of your work. So here we go, 50 likes on this one. They're just laying down the road for copyright claims. Any product that uses code from Claude, Anthropic will then be able to claim co-ownership. Get ready to pay, lol, lol, lol. No. The watermark is a provenance signal. It can indicate that the Claude output was processed by Claude, but nothing in that mechanism transfers any copyright, assigns ownership, or gives Anthropic a slice of your business. I don't know where this narrative is coming from. It's being made up. Somebody down below here said it's like a hammer claiming ownership of your house because it was used to build the house. I love the metaphor, and yeah, in a way, this is true. The hammer does not claim ownership. In the same way that when you use Photoshop can leave metadata without owning your image. Adobe does not own your photos when you use Photoshop. A provenance mark can record which tool touched the file without giving that tool ownership of the result. And that has generally been the case, and I don't know why people think it's any different this time around. Now, so the simple rule is the mark can say that Claude has processed this. It cannot say Anthropic owns this. Okay, so what is actually inside the text? I've got someone here saying, this makes no sense. I can copy the text output and paste without formatting. However, if it's the way the text is written, it isn't just a watermark, just a dialect. It will likely be extra useless text, since AI is needlessly wordy. It's special characters, you can easily strip them. Can't people just copy the text and use text only to paste? Will it survive Notepad and Command? Okay, a lot of comments are assuming that the watermark is in the formatting. It's like invisible Unicode, extra spaces, or weird characters. No, that would be too easy to remove. You could just paste it as a plain text, as people are saying. You could use Notepad, you could strip out the characters, or done. That's so Anthropic have described 2 systems that are being used, and it's metadata. They talk about the systems they are going to be using. Now, the signed provenance metadata, that's for supported files like PNGs, JPEGs, SVGs. They can add a C2PA provenance metadata. Basically, it's a little bit of file, a little bit of additional information, metadata that is added to the file to say who made this. That said, that can be stripped off. So that's not what people are talking about. That's not particularly interesting. So the text watermark is interesting. Anthropic say the text mark is applied at the model level. It survives copy-paste and may survive some editing. The exact method remains undisclosed. They will be releasing the technical specifications. They will be releasing the detector, but right now we do not know. But we think it's probably similar to Google's public synth ID system that shows the basic idea of statistical watermarking. Basically, during generation, the model slightly adjusts which plausible token it chooses as it goes along, and it generates for you. And then the detector looks for that pattern across enough text. It is the combination of words. It's the combination of how the words are arranged in sentences and over paragraphs. It's much more subtle than just using one word over another, because there are smart people working on these tools. And just saying here there's going to be extra useless text, no, nothing extra will sit inside of the document. Again, we'll find out when Anthropic tells the technical specifications. Now, let's talk about the removal hacks, because there are some really fascinating ones. How do we remove this watermark? Lots of suggestions, and most of them were wrong. So print it off, scan it back in, That's not going to work. So print it off, OCR it back, or manually type it out. That won't work because the watermark is in the composition of the text. It is not, again, it's not white characters, it's not in the white spaces, it's not Unicode characters, so you can't just strip them out of the text. It is in how the text is composed. That's where the watermark is. It's in the statistical distribution of the tokens. So it's much more subtle. So it's incredibly important to realize the text holds the watermark. It is not in the file format. It is not in the TXT file. It's not in the metadata. That's a separate issue, but it is in the text itself. So retyping it out, as this person has said, just manually type it out. One, it's going to take you a long time, but it's also going to get you to the same result, just in a very slow manner. The signal lives in the sequence of ordinary token choices, and typing those words manually will just preserve the sequence. The same if you're putting it through OCR or any of these methods. Okay, so there's another range of suggestions here. Stick it in another LLM. Give it to a Chinese LLM. Give it to Kimi. Somebody's saying, hey, Claude, generate an entire movie script for me. Give it to me in Markdown. Hey, Kimi K3, this movie script is watermarked using this method. Rewrite it and remove the watermark. Thanks in advance. Okay. There's no magical remove this watermark button or command because Kimi or any other model does not know how the watermark is composited. What you can do is rewriting. So you can get a second model to rewrite the passage. This is a known weakness in something like SynthID, and it will probably be the same in Anthropic's watermarking. If you go through enough rewrites, paraphrasing, translation, you can weaken the original signal. So Google explicitly say thorough rewriting and translation can greatly reduce SynthID's confidence. But that doesn't mean that there is a secret remove this watermark button inside of other large language models. You'd have to manually go through the process of re-editing and rephrasing each and every single time. And there is a cost to that. It's going to alter meaning. It's going to introduce errors. It's going to flatten the voice. And if you're doing this on code, it's going to absolutely mangle it. And I do want to show you, this is Guillaume Meyer. He's got a watermark remover, which is going viral right now because people are saying, oh, just use this and you'll be fine. Even Guillaume says, look, the only way to remove it, where is it? A text watermark. He says, look, there's a cost here. There's a massive cost because the text watermark lives in the coding itself. So you can either reword, but rewording degrades the copy. So he says, super honest and super valuable. He says, which leads to the honest full circle question. If the plan is to rewrite the text with a cheaper model anyway, Kimi, DeepSeek, why pay for the premium model in the first place? Why use Claude and then garble Claude's output when you could have just used DeepSeek or Kimi in the first place? Generating directly with a cheaper model is simpler, cheaper, and produces the same or better end result. So heavy rewriting will degrade a statistical watermark. We just don't yet know what Claude's threshold is. So we will know that when the detector is out. Now, one comment I did love, and it stopped me in my track. I have a question regarding this. If it is a statistical model, and it is based on token numbers, as you mentioned, cannot you instruct the model to generate a random or specific word between each word of the actual response, so after removing the words, it cannot fingerprint the text? If so, then this new system wouldn't help with detection, just decreases the quality of the model. So this is fascinating. What happens if we tell Claude to insert the word banana as every second word? Would that work? That seems so prosaic. It seems so simple and mundane. So initially I was like, no, that's not going to work. I went away and did some research, and it's a thing. It's called a scrubbing attack. And I don't know how well it would work, but I'm fascinated to see if we can trick the detectors moving forward with this. So it might work. Really, really cool. So I initially pushed back on it and then went away and checked it, and I think they are onto something. This is a genuine question. So somebody said, if it is your work, it wouldn't have an AI watermark, so you don't need to worry. If the AI did the work for you, well, that's a different matter. True. I have been running my own text for AI grammar checks and punctuations. Now they can take the credit. Interesting. I frequently have AI write in my voice, so it reads and sounds like I wrote it will still be detectable as AI. So people are saying, well, because I'm actually doing the work, I'm doing the thinking, it's in my voice, I'm doing everything, I'm just having the AI do some checks on the end, surely I'll be fine. Probably not. We think that Claude is still going to add a watermark as soon as it touches your work. So it will be like a fingerprint. It's going to leave a fingerprint saying, hey, Claude was involved in the processing of this. So you could write the entire piece yourself and then ask Claude to fix the punctuation, translate it, shorten it, restructure it, rewrite it, whatever it is in your voice. And Anthropic would then fingerprint that as processed by Claude. That's a problem because a positive result cannot recover the initial creative history of the document. It cannot say who had the idea, who wrote that first draft, whether the claims are true, or whether somebody broke a policy, a workplace, school, or university policy. All it says is, hey, Claude has been used in this process. That can be misconstrued. That can be interpreted in many damaging ways. And it also means a negative result also proves very little. So if something comes back from the detector and it is negative, it could be because it was an older, unsupported model. It could be a short passage, so there wasn't enough time for the watermark to take hold. There could have been heavy editing, translation, different export path, a degraded system, or maybe they just use a different model that doesn't use watermarking, like Kimi, like Quen, like DeepSeek. So the detector will give us evidence of a touch that Claude has been used at some point. I like to think of more of that as it's like a fingerprint. It can tell you, if you are investigating a crime, that somebody has touched the murder weapon. That does not mean that they did the crime, only that they have touched it. And with, unfortunately, managers, schools, and clients could treat one probabilistic signal as proof of cheating. And they'll come back at you and say, hey, you used AI to do this. I'm not paying you. Or you're losing your grade because of this one signal. And that could be a real problem. And arguably, Anthropic are overstepping here. So I'm going to actually pull up Article 50. In Clause 2, I highly recommend you go and read this. This is Article 50. So this is the one for providers. So providers are companies like OpenAI, Anthropic. The paragraph I want to show you is this obligation to watermark generations shall not apply to the extent that AI systems perform an assistive function for standard editing or do not substantially alter the input data by the deployer or the semantics thereof. So if it's used in an assistive way, an assistive function for standard editing, and does not substantially alter the input, then it does not need to be watermarked. The EU saying, no, that's fine. You can edit, you can make these small changes, and you do not need to watermark. It seems that Anthropic, and again, we haven't got their detector, we haven't got their technical specs, but it seems that as soon as text goes through Claude, it's going to be watermarked, even if it's for these small additions. So Anthropic may be overstepping and doing more than they have to, which raises new, very interesting questions that we're not going to talk about now. Again, we need to wait until Anthropic release more details about this before we jump to any conclusions. I had a lot of comments saying that the EU has no power over them and their country. That's not correct, I'm afraid. Sorry. Hell, over the over the last 6 or 7 years, US companies have paid about $5 billion in GDPR fines since about 2019. So that's 5 billion pieces of counter evidence that actually, yeah, the EU does have jurisdiction and can quite successfully leverage fines. What goes in the EU does have a global impact, whether you like it or not. It doesn't change the fact. Sorry. A couple of reasons why this is the case. So the AI Act, and I covered this on a video on Monday, if you want to get the details, it applies to providers outside of Europe when their systems or their outputs reach the EU market. So a company like OpenAI or Anthropic, as soon as they have EU customers, they fall under the EU AI Act. It's that simple. So being based in California does not automatically end the analysis. Where you start doesn't matter. It's where you end. It's where your customers and your users are, who you sell to. That is the important part. So Anthropic have chosen a worldwide rollout of this system. They could have said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to play by your rules. They said, no, we are going to play by your rules. And more than that, we're going to apply this watermarking worldwide. And indeed, this is what the other Western AI companies are doing, bar XAI, Elon Musk's company. He's the only one who's pushing back on this right now. So why? Why do this? Having one global model is cheaper and simpler than maintaining separate European and non-European versions. I mean, imagine trying to split and maintain a Claude EU and a Claude non-EU. That's mad. It would be so onerous and so expensive. You'd be splitting the model, splitting the server load, splitting the product divisions, maybe even splitting the companies. It's not worth it. It's easier just to play ball because there is more money to be made in two different ways. You get, one, access to EU markets, which are still good markets. There's money to be made here, a lot of money. And two, less fines. So it's a carrot and a stick. You're going to make more money and you're going to lose less money because you're not going to get fined up the wazoo. And we've seen this before. GDPR changed websites globally outside of Europe. Cookie banners the world has been cursed with are because of the EU. Again, your feelings on this do not change the actuality of the situation. Again, it's much simpler. Just you're going to make more money if you just follow the rules of the most fussy counterpart in the agreement so that you have access to the markets and you don't get absolutely demolished by fines. Because from the 2nd of August, about 12 days ago, Article 50 applies. Older systems that are already on the market get a limited grace period up until 2nd of December, so they have a few months. But after that, exposure becomes extremely real. It's up to 15 million euros or 3% of worldwide turnover. That's an immense amount of money for a company like Anthropic to be fined 3% of your turnover, not profits, revenue. That by that time, December the 2nd, I expect OpenAI to have fallen in line as well. They've already stated publicly, this was a couple of weeks ago, that they will be doing this. So do you have plans to support text outputs? Consistent with our commitments under the European Commission's Code of Practice on transparency of AI-generated content, our goal is to expand provenance signals to all modalities, including text. This is OpenAI. So this is happening across the board. They will all be adding AI watermarks to text, just like Anthropic. So of the 600 plus comments, a lot of them were coming from a place of not really understanding what's happening. I'm being generous here. But there were a number of comments that hit very real issues. They're in the vast minority, so I wanted to highlight them and basically say, hey, these are really good comments. Well done. So this one from Chase, he said, I find it hard to imagine text watermarking will not affect the quality of output for certain applications, especially poetry, where you might need a precise meter, rhyming, initial letters for an acrostic, syllable structure, or other constraints beyond just meaning. Yes. Love this, Chase. And then F. Nunez says the reason why Anthropic is catching a lot of flack and OpenAI is not, apart from the fact OpenAI haven't released this yet, but is because Anthropic is used by a lot of developers. And engineers love it when they're forced to produce inferior output just to appease the fears of career bureaucrats. The point here being, in coding, in engineering applications, we need precision. We also need precision in poetry, as Chase is saying, because certain applications need that precision. Nudging the probabilities off even slightly messes everything up. So poetry, acrostics, technical standards, code can be highly constrained. They have to fit a certain form, otherwise they don't work. And does watermarking reduce quality when the model has fewer valid choices? If it's been nudged towards certain tokens, then yeah, that's going to be a problem. So Google reports no detectable quality loss for its own SynthID implementation. But that is useful evidence about SynthID. We do not know what the Claude method is. We do not know what the Claude watermarking system is. We should know later, but this is a very valid concern for people who code. We need our code to be tight. We don't want that to be nudged off course to choose different tokens just to add that watermark. That's incredibly, incredibly dangerous. I also love this model collapse comment, and I think it's worth pointing out. It seems like it's just a move being made so that AI companies can avoid model collapse from training on AI-generated data and shitify and kill the internet and still get to steal from the corpse. Lovely. So model collapse, very briefly, is this idea that because AIs are so prolific now, the internet is filling with AI-generated content. Unfortunately, the internet is also the main training source for a lot of new models, which means that our new modern models, GPT-6, for example, is training on outputs made by GPT-4. This is also why Anthropic were destroying books recently. They were trying to get content from pre-2022 books, because they know that is not AI generated, that is pure content. So in this case, adding a digital watermark actually helps the labs a lot. It helps to identify and then deprioritize or even exclude synthetic text in future training sets, which is genuinely helpful for Anthropic, OpenAI and Google. This solves a big problem that they have moving forward. It's the EU takes the blame, the labs get a cleaner filter for future data, which is great for them, not so much for us. So where are we? It's complex, and I can see why there's a lot of confusion. So let's recap what we actually do know. We know that Anthropic says supported Claude models can mark text at a model level. We know that supported files are going to carry C2PA provenance. We know the rollout is going to be worldwide. It's not just in the EU, but everybody using Claude models. And new models support marking from launch since August the 2nd. So we've already got watermarked models right now, with older models being updated retroactively. And a detector is coming, according to Tariq, who works at Claude. Still missing, and we're waiting for this, is the exact method. We're assuming it's like SynthID. We do not know. That is the standard and is being used by many companies. Google, OpenAI use SynthID. But we do not know the exact method. Until we know that, until they release their technical specifications, a lot of this is speculation. We also don't have a model coverage table. We don't know the reliable passage length. Like, when does the watermark kick in and become reliable enough? Because obviously if it's only 1 or 2 words, you won't be able to watermark that. What is the passage length it requires? And then what are the false result rates and attack robustness? We don't know. We do not know, but as soon as we have the detector and the technical specifications, we'll be able to start making some educated guesses about this. This means anyone promising a removal trick is guessing, or they're lying. They're probably trying to sell you something. So subscribe if you want the actual test rather than another round of confident speculation. As we move forward over the next couple of weeks, I'll continue to cover this topic, and I'll bring you what I hope is the signal rather than the noise. That's a bit strange. Anyway, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel and to the newsletter at aiwithkyle.com. Thanks.